The Rock. No one has ever escaped from this prison. This is Frank Morris. Armed robbery, burglary, grand larceny. Morris has escaped from many prisons, but Alcatraz could be the exception.
I smell something burning.
I'm looking for a new punk.
Good luck.
You don't understand. I just found her.
I guess anything you want bad enough is worth a chance.
Including busting out.
Some men are destined never to leave Alcatraz. Alive.
This island is solid rock.
No one's ever busted out.
No one's ever made it.
Since I've been warden, a few people have tried to escape. Most of them have been recaptured. Those that haven't have been killed.
I may have found a way out of here.
No one has ever escaped from Alcatraz.
I'm in.
Me too. And no one ever will.
There are 12 counts every day.
Hold it.
One long count. We count the hours. Tuesday night we go.
Shake down.
The bulls count us, and the king bulls count the counts.
No one has ever escaped from Alcatraz. And no one ever will.
See you later, man.
Goodbye. And no one ever will. And no
In
one ever will.
1962, that statement was no longer valid. Clint Eastwood.
Hey there, and welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary.
Escape from
Clint Eastwood, Escape from Alcatraz from 1979. Yeah, I finally gotten around to doing a Clint Eastwood film. And it's not a standard Clint Eastwood film either. It's the Joker in the pack, I think. It's quite different. This was a midweek rewatch with my parents, and that always changes the dynamic a little bit. And interestingly, I think I first heard about this film through my dad. He's always been a big Clint Eastwood guy, of course. It's a generational thing. Clint Eastwood is about 10 years older than my dad, so he grew up watching Clint through his whole career, starting out in those Western TV shows. Could have even been Gunsmoke, I think, up through the Italian spaghetti westerns, into the more recognizable westerns, some war films, Dirty Harry, of course, and then Clint as the action hero, including the movies with Clyde the Orangutan. My dad really loved those. We watched those together. And then by then into the 80s, and I was discovering Clint for myself in films like Tightrope, and on into the more, I guess, Clint as filmmaker era in the late 80s into the 90s, and then Clint as the fully fledged Hollywood legend, not so much for the acting, but for the direction. One Take Clint. Really ramped up after Unforgiven, of course. But anyway, my dad was always a fan of this one, and he was also a fan of Birdman of Alcatraz, which was a true story too, I think. This one is allegedly a true story, and I actually think over the years he sometimes mixed the two films up, my dad, that is. A lot of family nostalgia revisiting this one, and I've got to say I picked well, because both my parents stayed awake the whole way through. That is a rarity, I can tell you. My dad usually stays awake nearly 99% of the time. I know he's really tired if he doesn't make it through. My mum kind of drifts off in most films. I think she lasted this one. That really says something. Good on me for choosing this film. What's it about? Well, the title kind of gives it away, but a bit more specifics is that it tells the alleged true story of a guy called Frank Morris, played by Clint Eastwood. Morris is transferred to Alcatraz, which is, of course, was the infamous island prison. It's no longer in operation. It's a prison that was supposedly impossible to escape from. in terms of surviving. I think people had escaped out of the prison and potentially the island, but they had perished in the waters, or the guards had shot them, or whatever. Anyway, once Frank Morris is inside, he quickly learns the brutal routines of prison life in Alcatraz. He's been in jail in other parts, so he knows full well the way jail works. He's quite a hardened crim. This one, Alcatraz, has got the strict warden with his own way of doing things. Quite an iconoclast. It's got the violent inmates. It's got the one that tries to make Frank his punk, like you heard in the trailer there. That's the lovely Wolf, his character. Limited freedom. These guys have got less. There's less sort of. There's less intentions from the warden to rehabilitate. He just wants to keep them there and away from society, because these are the guys that have escaped from other jails or that are beyond help. So there's quite a lot of psychological pressure being applied. Gradually, Frank Morris, he forms relationships with other inmates. He does quite well, including an older black man who's been running the library for quite a while and sits at the top of the hierarchy of the black inmates. And eventually Frank starts planning what would become one of the most famous prison escape attempts in American history. They use a lot of improvised tools. It's quite clever the way it's all put together, the escape plan, and I think it ends up being one of cinema's most grounded and generally believable prison break films. But that's just my take. A few other takes I've got. Is this Clint Eastwood's first really dramatic role? That sounds pretty crazy on the face of it. This is 1979, this film came out. Clint had been acting in movies for a good 15 years at least. He'd been on television for even longer. But I started thinking about all the films that he'd made. And he'd done heaps of westerns. He'd done Dirty Harry. He'd done action films. He'd done the orangutan films, or the first one anyway. But had he asked himself, because this was a Malpaso production, that's his own production company, had he asked himself to carry a serious dramatic role where he wasn't relying on a gun or action hero energy or a comedy element? There is no comedy element to this film. It's like a documentary nearly. I know he'd done other films that sort of were more dramatic, but they were thrillers, like The Beguiled, or I've forgotten the name of it. There's that film where he's the DJ with Shirley MacLaine. Is it Shirley MacLaine? No. I've forgotten it. It's early 70s and it's a thriller. But even that is sort of more light. It's lighter in tone. This film, like I said, is super realistic for the most part. I did consider, is The Outlaw Josie Wales, can you count that as a dramatic performance? It just happens to be set in the Old West, but that's the film, of course, that Clint cries in. Probably the only film, maybe. And I really do think that maybe you should count The Outlaw Josie Wales as a drama, just set in Western times. But I don't know. This film still has different energy. There's no sort of paying back the bad guys, or it's a lot more restrained in the tone and everything. It's not cinematic. This isn't movie star Clint. This is actor Clint, and he's really good. I've got to say, he looks like a guy who's in jail. He looks like he just looks the part. And I did see this film, ages ago, probably the only time, and then I'd forgotten, and thank God I'd forgotten, about the fact that Clint strolls through the jail without a stitch on at the start. And there's some artfully employed shadows, but you see 95% of Clint strolling around in the buff. It's the most unusual and jarring element in the film, actually. But obviously the big fella was happy to do it, or he wouldn't have done it. This is another collaboration between Clint Eastwood and director Don Siegel. Siegel directed quite a few other Clint Eastwood films, including Coogan's Bluff. That was a film from the late 60s that was perhaps the first time that Clint Eastwood had been in more like an urban, updated action film. Westerns like Two Mules for Sister Sarah, The Beguiled, Dirty Harry, and this one. So they had a really strong partnership. You can see why Eastwood trusted him with this, because Don Siegel as a director, you wouldn't call him an auteur, right? Not with these choices, and he doesn't come up with artsy sort of film camera work, or there's no wasted movement, there's no unnecessary scenes, there's no over direction, is what I'm trying to say. Everything exists for a reason. It's all compact and it's done really well. So they had a good working relationship, and I'm sure Clint Eastwood learnt quite a lot from Don Siegel, because if you go on and look at the films that Clint Eastwood directed, he kind of sticks to that same idea. The question of whether Clint Eastwood is an auteur is an interesting one. He does start to do more individualistic films in the late 80s, occasionally, like Bird, like The Bridges of Madison County, but generally sticks to a formula that works, which is no flourishes. Tells good stories with good performances, but everything's pretty much in the template. So look, I remember seeing this film years ago and thinking it was good. It was a good, solid film, and I was right. That's what it is, and the rewatch confirms that, and it confirms to me how tight this film is in every way. Good characters, they're established quickly and early and clearly. Everything breathes naturally, really competently done. It's a compelling story. It doesn't really need to go over the top and be outlandish. So there's no need for ridiculous plot twists or over the top Hollywood moments. Just tells the story as though it happened, and maybe it did happen. I don't. Just for context, I don't go into IMDb or other things and do heaps of research for these films, unless I want to check something or something really takes my fancy. But I don't do it as standard practice. So that's why I sometimes get lost, and I don't have too much information. It's just really what my own thoughts are. So what I like about Clint here is that he isn't playing a superhero. He is a tough guy, right? Like when Wolf challenges him early in the showers. He's got to deal with it immediately, but he deals with it as you would expect he would, and he does the smart thing. Gets in first. He understands prison politics, and he knows he's got to align himself with someone. So luckily he gets paired with the guy who's sort of like a Morgan Freeman character in the library, who then uses his influence to make sure other prisoners leave Clint Eastwood alone in this. It's all practical intelligence, not movie hero stuff. And that's in keeping with the story and the way that Don Siegel directs it. There are the memorable moments. I've already talked about one, Clint strolling around for minutes at a time at the start, right up the middle of the aisle there. Interesting way to be introduced to everyone in the prison. That must have been the warden's standard practice. And look, I'm probably talking it up a bit too much. We're not talking about Richard Gere's dick swinging near the window in American Gigolo. We're not talking about Barry Keoghan, I've pronounced that really badly, in Saltburn at the end, where you get this extended full frontal scene. This isn't something that, Harvey Keitel did in The Piano, or Bad Lieutenant, I think it was. We're not talking about sensationalism, full frontal nudity. We're just seeing, like I said, as much of Clint that you're ever going to see in a film. And he's in great shape. Doesn't look like he's just about 50 years old. I knew how old he was, and I asked my folks, I said, how old do you reckon he is? And they said, 40? No, he's 50, just about 50 in this, in top nick. Look, the only thing I really found a bit unbelievable was how effective there's use of paper mache to look like human heads in this. I thought that was stretching it a little bit because just the guards are so close to them, even in bad light. I just feel like they would have been able to tell night after night. But that's a small gripe. Everything else felt really, really spot on. I like seeing Fred Ward pop up late in the film as one of Clint's accomplices. Fred Ward to me is a real unsung supporting actor. He can do quite a few things. He can be a tough guy like he is in this. He looks like a tough guy. He looks like someone who's been around, but he can also be charismatic. And I think of his roles in other films like Shortcuts, for example, where he shows a lot of depth as well. And I've seen him in heaps of films. Don't ask me to name them off the top of my head, but I always like seeing him show up. He's perfect casting in here. He looks like a guy who knows how to do things. Someone you can rely on. Really capable kind of guy. Exactly the sort of guy that Clint Eastwood would work with and try and break out of prison with. And Frank Ward knows his place too. Fred Ward knows his place. He never overplays it for me, and perfect for a Don Siegel film. I did think about pairing this or comparing this with other prison films. You could have pretty good double feature with a whole range of films. The ones I came up with, obviously Shawshank Redemption, Cool Hand Luke, Papillon. That's another film my dad loves. I should watch that with him. Midnight Express. That's a far darker film, also based on a true story for the most part. Some of it's come out as being not so true now, but still, that's a major. I've got major memories of that film. I feel like those sort of films are comparable to this in some ways. Papillon, because it's my memories of that film are that it's told fairly undramatically, but I could have that totally wrong. Midnight Express, definitely, because it doesn't have any comedic moments. If you've ever seen Midnight Express, there's no laughs to be had in that film. That is a film to watch when you're feeling at the top of your game. Do not watch that film when you're feeling slightly depressed or sad. It's got totally different energy to Shawshank. Shawshank really has a message to it as well. And Cool Hand Luke's quite an entertaining, sort of light-hearted film for the most part. Yeah, I do think this is a stronger prison film because it's really gritty and it's showing you what it is. It kind of reminds me, there's an old Australian prison movie called Stir. Came out the same year as this, actually. Had Brian Brown in it. And it's a really realistic look at, I think it's prisoners revolting against the system. It's actually, I think it's a fair bit more full on than this one, but it's got the same tone and sparseness to it. What I like about this film is that it's got it doesn't have melodramatic scenes in it. No speeches, no cloying music and sentimentality. It's just the process, just showing you what they do, how they plan it, how they execute it, what leads up to it. There's some critical things with other prisoners that gets Clint Eastwood's character really thinking, look, I can't stay here. This is not for me. All right. Is it a date film or a hangover film or both? You can tell by now, this is not a date film. It's a grim prison drama. The scenes of ugly naked dudes sparring in the prison showers, for one thing. That'll make your date run a mile, of either sex. There's nothing here that really sparks conversation afterwards, I think. I reckon great date films are ones that you come out and you want to talk to the other person about it, and that's sort of the vibe that cements that first meeting, or even second, third date. There's no chemistry here. There's no emotional hook, really. It's just a really well-made film that you quietly appreciate, and I don't think that's what you want for a date film. A hangover film, though? I think it might just be. I think it could work pretty well as a hangover film. Why? It's entertaining. It is entertaining in its own way. It clips along at a good pace. There's no drawn-out stretches where you start fading away. It's really satisfying. It's easy to follow. The characters in this follow courses of action that you would expect them to follow. What I'm saying is I don't think this film demands too much mentally. It's not going to tax you. It's not going to tax your poor, hungover mind. So I think I would say yes. It's a good hangover film. I haven't tested that, but that's just what I think. All right, final thoughts. This was a really good rewatch for lots of reasons. It passed the 85 and 89-year-old test well. They stayed awake. They liked it. My dad remembered parts of it too, which is great. It reinforced to me how strong and how good simple filmmaking can be. Look, I love inventive filmmaking as much as the next guy. Maybe not as much as some people do. But I do like being reminded by films like this that films without flashy directing and unnecessary plot twists can be really fulfilling and enjoyable. This one just has competent storytelling, beginning to end, a really excellent Clint Eastwood performance in an acting sense, not just a likable character that says cool things and kills people, bad guys. It's a really good performance. Don Siegel, great stuff. I think it is one of the better prison films ever made. So if you like prison films, you've got to see this one. And I do wonder, is it the first or maybe the second time Clint Eastwood stepped away from being an action star or being a film star and gave us a truly dramatic performance? So yeah, really impressive film. It hasn't aged. There's nothing in it that makes you think it's fallen by the wayside in those terms. So yeah, check it out. And if you haven't seen it for a long time, rewatch it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. All right, that's Escape from Alcatraz done. Hope you enjoyed this pod and see you next time.